shark hat?
Hey, your shark hat's cool.
No, I think it's probably like one of the best. Like, I don't know,
Toques.
Deadwood. Oh, the toque.
I'm
yeah.
talking about the shark toque.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's my tribute to Jaws.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
No, it's very cute. Hey,
yeah,
Liam, how many divers have you eaten?
Or swimmers in the opening scene.
Do you want to be a shark?
It's funny. I show them a lot of early Spielberg. Oh, we're live.
You know what's fascinating is Caitlin, who's a grown adult, loves this game where you play a shark and you eat things like boats and divers. And you
Okay,
go in
we're
there.
live, Chris.
Oh, yeah, right. Sorry. Hi.
Hey.
Hey.
It's Chris and Jordan. It's Camera Store TV Live. And
Liam.
And Liam. Say hi, Liam. Say hi to the internet.
There's millions of people.
And guys, we have hit a huge milestone this week. It is.
We have hit I mean, it's a milestone for us, and we're very proud of it.
Yeah.
And the two numbers happen to line up really, really conveniently.
Yeah, so we're going to switch over to that right now, guys. We have hit 300,000 subscribers and 50 million views in the same week.
Do you know, interesting enough, speaking about 50 million, did you know that, sharks and ocean stuff, the oldest whale is 50 million years ago?
I
it's
didn't know
obviously
that.
dead, but that's when whales first appeared.
That's a great 50 million fact,
50
Chris.
million years, yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Here, why don't you go see Mom?
Oh,
Say bye-
also,
say bye to the internet.
Say bye, Internet.
No.
Bye, Internet.
Good job.
Also, South Korea has just over 50 million people right now. Did you know that?
That's also an excellent 50 million fact.
Fascinating.
Hopefully that's the last of them. And
The last? No, I've got more. Wow.
All right.
No, I have more. Speaking of photography, the human eye sees roughly 50 million shades of color. Did you know that?
I didn't. I was unaware.
It's actually very important when we start
Rolling
to
right
consider
along, guys.
color space of printers and monitors. No, I got more.
Okay.
The average kitchen sponge can contain about 50 million bacteria, which is actually truly disgusting when you think that you rub that all over your clean pots and pans.
Ew.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, perfect. So, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of context. We're going to
I'm
do
actually
something
not
different for the live
done.
show.
Did you know Leonardo da Vinci made this this painting, and it's commonly called ketchup on canvas. It's not very pretty, but it recently sold for $50 million.
All
No,
right.
seriously, ketchup canvas.
Yeah. No.
Every second, the human body makes 50 million new cells.
So, we're doing a Camera Store Live show today, a little different from usual, because months and months ago, Sony announced the A9. You weren't there for that.
Do you want one more? TCSTV has just reached 15 million views.
This has been a great start. Can I start now?
Yes, go ahead. I
Okay.
will not interrupt you
Awesome.
anymore.
Months ago, Sony launched the A9. I was there at the press event.
Now, when we say months ago, we mean like half a year ago.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been grossly negligent, haven't we, Jordan?
Yeah, we did get a video up on my experiences shooting with an A9.
Yes,
I
with
shot
Tony and Chelsea.
Yeah, I shot an
Northrop.
episode of their show, but we never did our photo review of it for a couple of reasons. First of all, I didn't want to do another sports one, which is largely
Right.
what Sony had at their shooting event, because I saw some different, really interesting niches for it. So we waited a little while before going out to shoot our A9 review.
Well, to be fair, yeah, the Sony A9, understandably so, has been marketed to the 1DX Mark II crowd and the Nikon D5 crowd, right? They're really trying to kind of win over sports photographers and that kind of stuff. But the fact is, we thought this is also a fantastic niche for people shooting on movie sets,
Yes.
doing weddings, maybe some journalism. And so we had an exciting opportunity to do, which we'll talk about later, we'll show some examples,
Yeah.
to work on a movie set with this camera. And we wanted to wait for that, right?
Yeah.
And also take photos that weren't sports and journalistic related.
Right. If you go online and look at, the Tony and Chelsea review that I shot, Max Yuriev did a great one.
yeah, for
Again,
sure.
very sports centric. And that's because the headline feature was 20 frames per second on this
Exactly.
camera. But I found that the really fast scanning full frame electronic shutter was the most interesting thing about it. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit today.
Yes.
But I do want to touch on, we shot a field test.
Yeah,
We
I mean,
started-
let's be honest. It's not like we decided, we're not going to do an A9 review. And yeah, a lot of people are like, when's that A9
When is that
review
coming out?
When's
Yeah.
that? And it reached a point where you're getting quite upset. We shot the A9 video
about half of it.
twice. Twice. And I think there was just a whole bunch of acts of God that really kind of.
Well, if you're calling me bumping into you and knocking the camera out of your hand,
Yes.
and breaking the car door, an
Right.
act of God.
Yes.
You could look at it that way, I suppose.
Yeah, it could have just been Jordan running into me. I had a wrist strap on too. You know I hate neck straps. But I had a wrist strap on.
It was just a little bit too loose.
You bumped into me. It flew out of my hand. Smashed the lens. Smashed the camera. Not nice.
And at that point, too, that was our only A9. They had barely started shipping yet, so we had to go get it repaired. By the time it came back, our video was even later again.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that really kind of compounded these issues.
So, just to touch on the internet and what they're asking.
Hi, everyone.
I bet you they have a lot of 50 million things.
Well, I've got A9 this late. Maybe the review would have been better context after the A7R III for why it's still viable.
I'm
Well,
glad
we're gonna
you
talk
took my
about that,
point,
yeah.
Yes.
Someone says their kitchen sponge has well over 50 million.
That person's got a big sponge.
Jordan was thinking of 50 million ways to tell Chris to be quiet.
Yeah.
Chris has spent somewhere in the space of $50 million on hair care products in his life.
That's true.
That's accurate.
No, that's not accurate.
Billy's saying 76 million Koreans, by the way.
I think that's all Koreans, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
And let's see.
I can't believe they're fact checking.
And let's hope one day they can unify into one happy nation.
And Billy says, get a shave. He's not looking at my feed just yet.
Get a shave who? Me? I did shave.
Both of you, I guess.
I normally have a way bigger beard than this.
Your shadow is pronounced. And
I have been told I have a very
All right,
pronounced
awesome.
shadow.
right now.
So, yeah, to give a little bit of context. Thanks, guys. As always, too. Yeah,
We appreciate the comments.
This is This is one of the great things about the live show. Hit us with any questions that you've got specifically while we're doing this. But the one thing that we could take away from our initial field test that I liked is we did do an interview with Tyler Stallman.
Yes, we did.
Who has a great YouTube channel and a wonderful podcast, actually 2 wonderful podcasts now. It's worth
Very much
mentioning,
so.
too. You did an episode on his the Stallman podcast where
On
you
the
talked
Stallman
about
podcast?
how to buy a camera.
I really
that
enjoyed
thought
doing
was-
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was a great episode.
Thank you.
But we went and talked to him a little bit about what the A9 represented in terms of attracting a more professional audience. Again, outside of that sports niche.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be appreciated. For me, I think, and again, remember, when the A9 first came out, nobody knew about an A7R III, although we speculated, right?
Yes.
But the A9 was really, I would say, the first Sony mirrorless camera where professionals were like, wait a minute, I actually have to take a serious look at this.
Yeah,
This could actually be something I could use day to day.
The A7R II was really, it seemed to be like a camera for enthusiasts
Yeah.
or like as a secondary body for pros, but didn't really break in as their
It
primary
lacked
camera.
focusing speed. It lacked shooting buffer capability. Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to talk about this, but also bear in mind this was recorded before the A7R III was launched,
Yes.
which also hits a lot of these same kind of topics. So let's jump over to the laptop and see what Stallman has to say.
To the laptop.
Our peeps are doing some laptop-y stuff.
We're doing some laptop stuff on the back end.
Thank you for coming back here, Tyler.
Hello again.
We are having a very bright sunny day today. We've been out in minus 20, 30 degrees.
This is
weather
a great day
together
to be out.
talking.
I'm
This is
glad
way
to
better.
join you today.
Now, the reason why we have you out here is, first off, you're always your insights always appreciated on the show, and more importantly, you're YouTubing now. And you actually did a very interesting video where you talked about, can your A7R Mark II replace your daily workflow cameras, your Canons and Nikons and whatnot? And your conclusion at that time was no, there were still things that were lacking that the NSR really had that these mirrorless cameras didn't have.
Yeah, the thing that drove me to the A7R was finding a new crossover camera, the 5D Mark III at the time.
Right.
Just wasn't doing it for video. It was really falling behind. So I wanted something I bought the A7R for video, even though it's a great stills camera.
Sure.
And still use the 5D as my main stills camera. So I did this in-depth comparison between the two because I want to know what makes sense for average pros to be using at this point, kind of the everyman working photographer. This is the camera that I'm really starting to feel might be that transition point. There are enough big issues with the A7R II and A7S II and A7 that I really wanted to stick with my 5D, so I got a Mark IV. This
addresses
camera,
a lot of them, right?
yeah, really solved a lot of the key points that I hit in that video. The biggest problem for me in the A7R II was operational speed. So not just the frames per second, which this has down,
course, yeah.
but just how quickly you can pick it up, take a photo, and review the photo.
Right.
and then keep working. There's always these huge lags after you shoot where you're just waiting and waiting for the card to have all the files written to it. So
menu problems.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, button placement, all that kind of stuff.
So I'd take quick bursts, 3 or 4 photos, or no, say 10 or 12 photos, then try to like show somebody, and I have to wait, and my menu's locked up. So now with this, the menu doesn't lock up quite as much.
Right.
The function menu's still
you
available.
can still play back, yeah.
And obviously it shoots really quickly, so I can shoot as fast as with my 5D, which is really great. Another big operational speed thing is just the body design got a lot better. On the back here, we finally have a joystick.
The joystick,
I mean, this seems small. Like, it seems like a small addition because it's common on a lot of cameras, but it's necessary for a lot of professional work.
Absolutely.
Before I had set my set menu to adjust it, and it was clunky, and this is a huge improvement. Better grip, better design all around.
Yeah, love the dials on the top.
Oh yeah, this one was really smart. I'm gonna be switching. Yeah, I would be switching with this all the
Well, it
time.
makes sense because, you know, yeah, this is the kind of camera that does shoot way too fast sometimes.
Yes.
We have 3 adjustable speed settings, which
yeah.
is great. And yeah, that makes sense to have it on a quick dial just to be able to click back and forth.
The most interesting things to me is like medium and low speed, but that I can use it quickly.
Right.
I don't need 20 frames per second. I just need a solid 10 or
10.
5 or whatever.
Tyler's
you know.
happy with
Yeah. Next, battery life. This is,
Yeah,
what can you
way
say?
better, of course.
This is what they should have done in the first place. The camera can be a little bit bigger, but now it's going to last the way that it should.
So yeah, I mean, what struck me using the cameras is that Sony has corrected a lot of the issues that they've had before on the camera, but there got to be some downsides. So what kind of stuff have you found so far?
This is universal for mirrorless cameras, and I feel it more and more as I use different mirrorless, is that sensor dust is a bigger issue, I think, than some people make it out to be. It makes me really nervous about changing my lens in a way that I just never worried about with DSLR. If I have something protecting the sensor, I pop the lens on and off all the time, but I am a lot more reluctant to ever change my lens.
Right.
Because it can screw up a whole shoot if you get some dust
It's
on
true.
there.
Sensor's right there. It's exposed. It's open, and I think that leads us to a whole bunch of issues compared to an SLR on just things like reliability,
Exactly,
or weather
yeah.
sealing, or dust
And that was the
proofing.
next one, is just like general robustness, like how well it can handle the environment, and that I can kind of just not worry about the camera and just worry about what I'm doing instead.
That is such a tough topic to talk about because, I think a lot of customers, they have this mindset like, yeah, my Canon, my Nikon, tried and true, loyal, I can rely on it, and there's a lot to be said for that. Absolutely, right? And the Sonys haven't really had an opportunity to be tested, and so it's this unknown. And we're not going to dunk this in the water even today. We're not going to do it. But I'm curious to know how it would stand up. Again, I didn't really like the plastic.
It feels like it will better, though. I mean, this door is better. Like this feels like it generally feels better. I think it's moving in the right direction.
But I guess the thing is, though, at the same time, the A7R Mark II, we've sold tons of them. The A7s, we've sold tons. We've actually had very few with issues in the store. And about yours, I mean, you've used yours quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Mine looks like it has a bit more wear, like it's wearing faster than the Canon, but it's working fine.
So I guess then the real question is this, okay, someone's out there, they're looking for a new camera, they're looking to invest in a system. Is this a viable option? Would you recommend this as a way to go over an Nikon or Canon?
Yeah, it's a big question, and I think for the first time, I think that Sony is ready to be the system for somebody really getting into a professional shooting environment. Other than the specialty markets that Sony was doing great at already, landscapes, A7R II. But this is becoming that well-rounded system. This is showing a more mature Sony that is ready to be the everybody camera. For me, it's still a bit of a question of, will the 5D Mark V be ready to compete with whatever Sony does at the time? I don't know. They're not moving fast enough. At this point, I'm still really happy to keep my Mark IV. Like they both have a great place. It doesn't make me dislike my Canon, but it's just so clear now that Sony is outpacing Canon, and the next generation is going to be a bigger question mark.
I don't disagree with you, Tyler. It really comes down to this. People are looking at this camera and it's getting all these comparisons like, oh, this is the DSLR killer. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I mean, price point wise, this is still well below a D5, a 1DX Mark II, and I think people are already pulling away from those cameras as it is.
And
they're
I think
too specialized.
it's a much more interesting comparison to things like the 5D or the mid-range Nikon. What's the mid-range?
Oh yeah,
Nikon?
well, like D810s,
yeah, there you go.
D750s and stuff. Yeah, but even on that same token, this is quite a bit more expensive than those cameras. So I kind of see really, the A9 is like a test bed for Sony to say, look, this is what we can do. We're flexing our muscles. We can do this. We're pushing new electronic sensor technology. Our cameras are fast. We can make them rugged. And I think that's an important note that in the next generations, as you say, 5D Mark IV, I think we'll have new Sonys, A7 IIIs and whatnot. That people might say, okay, I'm not going to spend $6,000, but for $3,000, I can get a camera that's now dominating.
Totally, absolutely. It's going to get a lot harder to choose. Honestly, it's going to be, we're getting to that place where it's really hard to know which brand to go with.
Well, there you go. On TCSTV, we have decided that we have hit the cusp now where mirrorless can compete with SLRs in the pro market.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. And guys, you know, YouTube, of course, you're on there, Tyler Stallman. Check out his blog, but really the podcast. You do an amazing podcast.
Yeah, cameras or whatever.
Yeah, cameras
Search
or whatever. Search for it.
Jordan's on there all the time. You should come on. You haven't been
I would
on yet.
love to be on. I would love to be on. And it's neat because you really talk about the industry, but from a more human aspect, from a working pros aspect as well. And there's a lot of interest there. So check out that podcast. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
being
Chris.
on the show. Okay. It was strange. I mean, I was talking still for 5.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But that was weird. So, what we can get from that, first off, that was a beard. This is not bad. I think whoever said that this is too big can take it back because that was obscene.
That was,
I'm still very short compared to everybody I know.
Yep.
And I talk with my hands a lot.
Yes.
Still.
That was our takeaway from that.
Also, you can't just like have a shirt on at the start and now you don't have a shirt on. That's so strange.
I was told with YouTube compression we could have some moiré issues. Not that the GH5 and GH5S would give us moiré. So I've chosen to address that and also mention that you can get your own TCSTV t-shirt.
Oh, sly.
Yeah. So this is the A9 here, and we have had a chance to shoot with that guy for quite a while. And yeah, I do think certainly what we've seen in terms of the store, Sony really marketed it as this is the camera for sports and wildlife,
right.
you know.
Absolutely.
But almost all, I can certainly say every A9 that I've had come through here has actually found its way onto set. That's one huge niche that we've seen with these guys. And all of that we should talk about comes down to the fact that this has a silent, extremely fast scanning shutter on it.
Yeah, you know, it is a very different thing because when this camera first came out, definitely very expensive.
Yes.
You know, the most expensive A7R, A9,
A
body, full frame body. Most expensive by far. And Sony really was trying to prove a point with this camera. You know, I feel like this is almost like a technological showpiece, something they really wanted to attack Nikon and Canon with, to say, hey, the last bastion of what SLRs can do that mirrorless can't do, we want to get into that.
Well, and I think it's also a real statement because no one's made a sports-oriented full pro camera for a very long. I mean, the last one I could think of is back when Olympus targeted the E3 as their version of like a 1DX or D4, D5.
And Olympus tried to do that a little bit with the M1 Mark II, but
no one's done it successfully.
No,
I mean, none of those cameras, if it doesn't say Canon or Nikon on it, those sports-centric bodies, the journalist ones in the digital age haven't done that well. This is Sony's kick at that. And we've still found here at the shop it's quite a niche body.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we mentioned, this interview that you folks just watched, we mentioned how this was pre-A7R III.
Yes.
And I think the attitude now is, especially now, you look at the A7R III and you're like, well, why would I buy an A9? Right. And there is a lot of validity to that. The A7R III has not quite the same focusing system, but effectively a similar speed focusing system.
That's what we found, yep.
A very respectable buffer rate and shooting speed. It's got much higher megapixel count, comparable low light performance. This camera's dynamic range was not astounding, to be honest.
It was good, but nothing. We didn't see any major jumps there.
Yeah.
Certainly kicks the hell out of the D5 at low ISO, but honestly, no huge.
When you get up to high ISO, actually, I feel like the 1DX Mark II is better. And so this did do 24 megapixels. I feel like the A7R III is going to be a far more versatile camera, and it's way cheaper. So where does that leave the A9 now?
And I think that's where this camera is still very interesting, is looking outside of the 20 frame per second with continuous autofocus, which is amazing. And I do love shooting with zero blackout is a really interesting way, for burst shooting, stuff like that. Like I find, even, compared to using an optical viewfinder, I find it easier to track action with the electronic viewfinder with no blackout.
Definitely. Plus the extra coverage of the autofocusing system. But it also has to be discussed. And again, I'm sure you guys have comments about this too, but they did kind of castrate the video capabilities of this camera.
They very much did, yeah.
Do wedding photographers need 43 megapixels? Not really, no, but landscape photographers do. Wildlife photographers are probably going to use the A7R III, to be honest, in a lot of cases, because that seems to be the popular trend. High megapixel and crop afterwards. So where does that leave this camera? Is this now really a dedicated wedding photography camera / movie set camera?
That's really what we've found. I mean, those are the people buying it here at the store. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. Having a completely silent camera, you can pass those fees on to your clients. Like,
that's true.
Certainly, I could see if I was hiring a high-end wedding photographer, where you're looking at like $4,000 to $5,000 for the event, and they're like, oh, for an extra $500, I'll shoot it silently. For me personally, once I'm already in that deep, I'd be like, absolutely.
The justice of the peace / chaplain will be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he gets so mad when you hear clickety clickety click click.
And I think we're really going to start to see that with journalism as well. Is
Possibly,
once word gets out that people can shoot with silent cameras that can capture the same quality image, we're already seeing that with golf now. Like, if you want to shoot the backswing, you have to shoot it with a Sony A9.
To be fair, the A7R III does have a silent shooting mode, but it's got a lot of rolling shutter, just because of the large scan rate on that sensor.
And that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Like, we have cameras like the EM1 II, the GH5 that have very fast scanning sensors when you're shooting in electronic mode, but they're all physically smaller sensors and the penalties that come with that. If you're looking at APS-C or full frame, the only one that I feel can comfortably shoot things like action, or even, going back to event shooting, stuff like that, a bouquet toss or something like that, where you're panning with it. The A9 is the only camera with something bigger than micro four thirds I think can do a good job capturing that.
I totally agree. And I want to put this out to the people watching right now. 20 frames per second with continuous autofocus is incredible. 10 frames per second with adaptive glass is still incredible. But how many people would need that? So I want to put that out there. Do you see 20 frames per second being an important thing? Because I know for myself, what would scare me as a potential buyer of this camera is that we're going to have probably at some point an A7 Mark III, something like that, right? When are we going to get the update to the A7 II? When are we going to get this 20 to 24 megapixel full frame camera that does are they going to use the same sensor?
I don't, yeah.
Are they going to put the silent shooting in that camera and make this almost totally obsolete?
Yeah, it's tough to say.
That's scary.
If they put some of this similar stuff in, I think that would make a ton of sense, just based on who we're seeing buying this camera. It's not for the high frame rates. How much of this is going to be in that, and how much are they going to kind of handicap on that camera model in order to keep this guy relevant? It's tough to say.
That's the other question. Are they going to handicap future cameras to try to keep this relevant? I hope that Sony looks at this as being certainly a niche tool and a specialized tool and a very capable one for that. We want to talk about that more. But maybe also as a technological marvel, just as to prove a point, and then we'll get again into cameras that hopefully aren't handicapped.
Just a little bit of clarification. What's the megapixel count on this guy?
24.
24, okay.
Which is very respectable.
It seems that people were saying like 43 megapixel at 20 frames a second, no thank you.
No, that's the A7R III can do 43 megapixels, but not at 20 frames per second.
At 10 frames per second, yeah.
Hey, Brad, how's it going?
Thanks, man.
Just to walk out.
Oh, okay, that's okay. That was Brad who just walked on. And actually, we're going to have Brad on in just a little bit because we want to talk about something where this does excel and does do something unique. We
Absolutely.
Want to elaborate on that.
But let's jump to a couple questions first before we move on to the next
comments, questions.
Oh, man, comments and questions. Here I am, slacking.
Yeah, Ron.
Well...
And then we want to bring up those the announcements.
How about a really heavy-hitting one? Between the A9 and the GH5, why? The A9 is extremely limited for video.
Correct.
So, go get her.
The GH5... Obviously, low light performance is still going to excel on the A9. It does do very, very well in low light. Certainly, I would say comparable to cameras like the Nikon D5 and 1DX Mark II. Maybe not quite as good at high ISO, but certainly comparable. And there's a lot to be said for that because they've got higher megapixels than those cameras. Yep. And those are very good low light cameras. Dynamic range on here is acceptable.
Yeah, I would
better
really
than the GH5, I'd probably say.
I think it's a tough conversation because if we're looking at these for video, it's a no-brainer for me.
The GH5 is way better.
But as a still camera, there are certainly some areas that this does have better low-light performance for photo.
Sure.
It does have better dynamic range for photo.
Yes.
Again, looking at those. The autofocus system is also the best.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
This is the best autofocus I've ever used. And we were doing some tests when I was at the launch event with Tony and Chelsea, and we were getting the same or higher hit rate with the A9 comparing it to any of the Pro bodies out there, including the D500, which has a similar kind of coverage. And that's something we should touch on very quickly, is the coverage of phase detect autofocus points on this covers 90% of the frame.
Yes.
As opposed to the tighter, I believe it's a 60% coverage
on the
A7R
A7R III. Yes.
So if you do want that coverage right out to the edge of the frame, and I could see this being awesome for wildlife, sports, you could do some more interesting. Certainly, if you're looking at an interesting composition, I think it's great for that.
The GH5 was frankly, I mean, it is a very capable camera, absolutely. It was never really made for sports photography, wildlife. That's where the G9 comes into play. So, yeah, I mean, they're two very different cameras. The GH5, I still think, does way better video quality and capability than this camera will by far.
Well, and if we kick over to the camera here, guys, can we switch to the camera briefly?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, we're on it. Yeah, there you go. There's Ron.
So here we can see really... we can
tracking AF is very effective.
Very effective, and we can move right towards the edge of the frame, and you can see it's still tracking that GH5 right now.
Which isn't moving, of course, but you guys get the idea. There's Gary too. Yeah. And the eye autofocus is obscenely good on this camera, and of course the A7R III does have a very similar view too, which I love. Ron, look at us here.
Even Ron wearing glasses jumps right on very, very quickly.
Oh yeah, eye autofocus is the greatest thing ever. I mean, it blows you away. So yeah, they're very, very different cameras.
Yeah.
And this camera does 14-bit RAW, just as a side point. In the A9, we didn't really find that really gave much benefit. 12-bit at 20 frames per second, this camera still gets you all the dynamic range it can really deliver. So, yeah, fantastic camera at high speed.
And one other thing we should mention, there was a lot of talk when this first came out about potential issues with the scanning on it. Are we going to run into banding issues and a lot of I know there was a lot of talk, after Jared Poland posted that one video.
Right.
But what we've found is the people who are actually out using this in the field, I haven't had, following up with people who have grabbed it, I haven't had a single person have any issues with banding, rolling shutter being a limitation.
You do get slight sort of horizontal looking noise at like shadow areas in this camera when you boost it, but yeah, it's not banding. No, it's very good.
Actually, silent shooting mode. How does it do with LED illumination? Shooting stage productions with LED stage lights on most of his existing cameras. Olympus and Fuji can't use silent mode because of color shifts.
Yep, and that is where the faster scan on this really comes into its own. And that's where we're seeing a lot of people using it.
Yeah, we'll show you some examples. Did we get some color shifting? I would say, yeah, there was some, maybe, but it's minor. But we shot with LEDs on set. We're going to talk about that with Broad, and I was very impressed.
The big thing you've got to be very careful of are like older...
fluorescence and stuff like that.
Fluorescence or like those older LED displays that are, on things like scoreboards at sporting events and stuff like that, that are very slow.
Yeah, gymnasium arenas are still going to be the worst place to shoot photography ever in the world, and that's just a fact of life. I mean,
sodium vapor, you're still going to have stuff shifting, but you'll get the same thing with the mechanical shutter with those terrible lights.
Yeah.
And what is nice, this does have an anti-flicker in it, where it's going to wait for the same thing that Canon's done forever and Nikon started to implement, where it takes the shot when those light levels are going to be at their highest, and so it's a little more consistent.
Yeah, LED, no problem. Really, really nice.
Yep.
Do we know the actual electronic shutter sensor electronic shutter sensor speed?
You can get through this, Ron. I believe in you.
Yeah, I know. It was a mouthful. Electronic shutter sensor scan speed of the A9. See? That was almost a tongue twister.
I don't have that number. I know they cracked the code on that on DP Review.
Yeah, they certainly did. Yeah, I would check them out for that, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's incredibly fast. The fact is, rolling shutter is miraculously almost non-existent on this camera, and we've
done a lot of whip pans. Again, we're talking about things practically, real world shooting situations. There is still some scan to that, but this is the closest we've seen to a global shutter, and I think this really points in the direction of what photography is going to come as we see true global shutters with flash sync at any speed. Things like that are coming down the road.
That was what blew people away on this camera when it first came out as a test bed, was just that there's the potential to do that on a full frame sensor, which up to this point was easier to do on small sensors, but very difficult on such a large physical sensor. So yeah, Sony certainly has an achievement there.
Yeah.
Is the A9's autofocus better than dual pixel focus?
For video shooting, it's faster.
Yeah.
I still love the way that dual pixel autofocus ramps, but you can customize that in this camera. It's not as elegant.
No.
I still think the Canon where it's just touch the thing you want, and it does a very smooth rack focus with it.
That's Canon's
But if I
strength.
were shooting video for sports, this is faster.
Way better, yeah.
Yeah, so it might be a little bit jerkier, things like that, but it's certainly something I can rely on. And really, I would say the A9 and A7R III are the first Sonys where I would be comfortable using the autofocus on them from time to time, but they need to have it where it's just touch the subject, it immediately triggers lock-on AF and keeps following your subject. It's still something where you're going through your focus modes, or just leaving it on face detect if that's what you're trying to track. I'd like to see them clean that up a little bit more.
I mean, from your point of view, doing cinematography, do you feel like... I mean, the beauty of Canon's hybrid dual pixel AF is that it is so smooth and natural looking. It's like they just tweaked it to a point which is really, really, really pleasing. But do you feel like in a cinematic sense, if you were doing a move like that, would you rely on touch autofocus or would you just manually focus pull?
I mean, personally, I do. When I was shooting the Northrop's video, it was manual focus. Almost exclusively. But there's types of shooting where you can't fall back on that, or someone may not have, I've been using the Sigma 1835 for 4 years now. My muscle memory is really great pulling focus with that. If you're, renting a lens you've never used before, or you're just not comfortable doing that, then yeah, I think autofocus is very useful. It's great on gimbals. I'm not going to be one of those elitists who's like, guys, you just have to learn to manually focus your cameras, because the autofocus is getting better, and it is important for some people. And this can certainly deliver in that regard. But the A7R III is a better video camera than this.
Yes, for sure.
You get the picture profiles with it. You get the zebras with it.
Yeah.
I think it makes more sense. And I think that's unfortunate because the video quality from this is awesome. But they have pulled some features off. I really think because we're going to see an A7S III or an A9S or whatever it winds up being in the very near future here.
Okay.
Guys, why don't we jump over to the laptop just for a couple things for our local viewers.
And then we'll look at some photos.
So, coming up very quickly, we'll pop that in there.
So,
Exposure is coming, and this is the Calgary Photography Festival, where we've got a lot of really cool exhibits coming up.
And really, we should say, Calgary, yes, but Alberta in general, right? There's going to be events in Banff, Calgary, of course, a lot of events, local galleries and stuff too. But yeah, this is a big, big event. If you're looking to check out some galleries or see some talks, this is the time in February for that. We've got a lot of really cool stuff going on. I know we're doing some tintype photography workshop is running. We've got some neat workshops. Phil Chin's going to do some analog stuff. Yeah, tintype and Polaroid transfers and stuff like that's really cool. As well, when you go to Exposure, their website is just such a handy way to see all the gallery openings. There's always gallery openings going on, but this is when you see a lot of new projects. It's really become a big event. And yeah, just walk in, enjoy some local talent, see some of the work that's coming out. There's some really beautiful stuff.
And the other thing we want to mention, which we just announced yesterday, this is a big deal. The Wooden Nickels episodes that everybody loves. We've done Goodfellas. We've done
Blood Diamond.
Yeah. We shot another one a couple weeks ago, and we are going to be premiering that at a movie theater.
Yes.
So if you're in Calgary, it's a free screening.
Totally free.
You'll get the whole Wooden Nickels episode, so the behind the scenes, everything like that.
Yeah. We'll be there to answer any questions.
We have used some stuff that's unannounced in order to capture this one, so we can't talk about that too much.
But the stuff that we did shoot this on will also be an interesting thing because you can ask questions about that as well.
Yeah, we'll be doing a Q&A afterwards, but it's just going to be cool to see some of this stuff on the big screen. We're recreating movie scenes, so why not show them in a movie theater?
First 50 people that show up get a free drink. It's beer.
They get beer,
or drink,
popcorn, and you will get an autographed Wooden Nickels poster.
Yes, unique.
For you to hang with, take down your fine
I'm not
going to
say one of a kind, but like 50 of a kind.
I will trade you my poster for a beer.
There you go. So you're not getting a poster, Ron.
What are you talking about?
But yeah, it should be a great event. This is the first time we've actually done this at a theater. Like, that we're really excited to do this. Globe Theater is an amazing space. So if you're in Calgary, please come down. Obviously, there's space for hundreds of people, so we want to see a really big turnout. Please show up. We'll be there, and we're really excited for this. And it has to be mentioned too. We've already said it on the wood nickels, but we got to thank so many people. There's too many to name, but so many people have been excited about these events. They come out, they help us shoot these things totally free, just for the joy of making film. And so we're really appreciative of that. So thank you to everybody who helped us out. Camera Store staff, DDG staff, friends, family, everybody helped us out. Really excited about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so come to that event. And if you're not in Calgary, well, obviously don't come, but this is going to be up on our channel. We're excited to post that too. So yeah,
shortly afterwards.
You're not going to miss out.
If you want to see it first.
There's swearing.
Yeah, there is. There is.
Unlike our live show.
Naughty language. It just real quick.
So don't bring kids. Don't bring kids.
Yeah,
don't bring kids.
Bring your children. They're
Don't
young.
bring kids.
They have impressionable minds. Just bring them in.
Unless you're one of those parents that's like really forward thinking, you're like, oh, I'm gonna teach my kids swears because I want them to feel like it's not a bad word. Or you're one of those parents that just is negligent, just swears around their kid even though they're like 4 years old. Whatever you want to do.
We're just ripping off topic here.
All right. Just going on same-ish type topic. A9 versus the Leica SL.
I mean, the Leica SL makes a better doorstop than the Sony A9 does because of the extra weight. So
I mean, it's a better autofocus system on this. My favorite thing about the Leica SL is the viewfinder. That was the first stills camera we saw with that beautiful $3.6 million.
But this has a beautiful viewfinder.
This has the same viewfinder technology.
But so does the A7R III now. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the Leica SL, if you want to hold something open or like flatten leaves on a book, it's great as an added weight for that. I clubbed Ron in the head with it as part of the promotion for that. Yeah, it's good for that. It's a little expensive as paperweight, but it's good.
So we got a special guest.
Oh, do we? Are we going to that right now?
We're going to jump into that.
We're going to go.
So we decided as a field test, and based on who was buying the camera, because, you know, while we were waiting for the A9 to come back from repair, we had a lot of time to discuss how we wanted to review this. And mostly it was going on movie sets, television sets, things like that. So you decided to come out. I was DPing a film for our friend Barad.
I didn't decide. It's my job. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Barad was kind enough to invite me to come on set.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is a big deal, too, because we were making a joke like, oh, well, why wouldn't you want some friend to come help out? But the fact is, hi, Barad.
Hi.
Are you on there?
Welcome.
Is he on there?
And
You might have to talk loud.
through the
Oh, we
magic
did it.
Okay, I'll just lean into you.
of live.
But here's the thing, though. I mean,
there.
this was a unique sub. Hey, Brad, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm sorry, I'm blocking light on you. This is a unique thing because, you know, your struggle is going to be keeping everybody working, keeping them in line, getting performances out of your actors, you know, making sure everything looks beautiful, camera operating, and you're hands-on director that way too. Mm-hmm. So the last thing you need is to have somebody on set shooting, getting in the way of shots, interfering with work, putting shutter clicks into the film and having to redo takes, right? And this was a very heavy kind of monologue thing. The actors really had to get into a proper headspace.
It was, yeah.
And on top of that, I was right in there, right? Like, I wasn't shooting with a 7200 from the back of the room. I was like right next to you.
Yeah, and I mean, when first Jordan said that you were going to come on set and kind of go through this, I was just thinking about, like you said, the context of the monologues and the pieces that they were working on. I was like, I don't know, because we had a fairly closed off set as it was.
Yes.
And then, but I know, like, one, you're very professional, and then the second thing you're saying is, like, they want to try out the silent shutter on it, which I was kind of hesitant. I'm like, I've never seen a good silent shutter. So, sure. And so when you came on, I was thinking about it last night, and you usually remember the bad things that happened on set, not as much as like the good things. And I do not at any time remember any interference with you or the camera, actually. Like, it was really silent, and you were getting very close and right into kind of where the actors were and everything like that, but it wasn't disturbing of the performances. It was, and those shutters can be fairly loud, and like you said, they can
absolutely
really mess up the taste.
And I really compare it because the last time we were on set together was on our friend Levi's movie Metanoia, where we had Gabe shooting stills with a traditional Nikon DSLR. And I distinctly remember there were several times where I was just like, dude, we're under the gun right now. You know, I don't need the photographer here. Or like, are they capturing me raging at the crew or anything. I was very aware of his presence when he was there.
And if you're upset, if you're behind time,
Oh, yeah.
you always are. And if you're not, you might not be making a film. But if you're upset, that shutter click, that you're wondering like who else has a camera right now, and why do they think they should? It's just little things that might get in the way of that thought process, that concentration and stuff.
Well, and this one specifically, they were all pieces that were monologues that we were capturing, so it's tough for the actors too.
Yeah, it's not just the director. I mean,
because
the actor
they're not delivering a single line
No,
cut. They
no.
have to be in that moment
It
with
was like
that monologue
7
in the back
minutes,
of their
10-minute
head.
long takes.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do, I guess, we're going to show some photos, but we're going to keep talking. But and Jordan's just going to kind of click through. But from my experience shooting this camera, I mean, first off, traditionally what you would do on a movie set is you would have a full SLR, and it's going to have a blimp around it, this huge thing. Right. So at best, if it's silent, it's also huge, distracting, gets in the way.
Things like changing lenses.
Oh, you haven't seen these yet.
I haven't seen this. No,
you get these photos. But yeah, I was so impressed with the A9 from a photography standpoint that I could get onto set. I was using wide lenses and normal lenses, getting right in there. And even for me, it was surreal because I'm pushing the button and I don't even know that I'm taking pictures.
There's no haptic feedback. It's really odd.
Just visually seeing it. And I actually found that very, very eerie at first, but then also very liberating because I didn't feel like I was getting in anyone's way. I wasn't disturbing. The actors weren't responding to me, pushing buttons or anything. It was so cool. It was cool. And for the most part, off the back screen, so I wasn't really, having the camera to my face and pointing there. But yeah, I really enjoyed the experience shooting. Of course, it was very low light too, and the camera performed beautifully.
Yeah, the low light I found really interesting with this because, I would say that we're seeing similar noise levels to what we do with the 1DX2, Nikon D5, but it is a very nice organic kind of grain structure where with electronic shutters, I'm used to things being kind of ugly. What kind of ISOs were you shooting at?
I think most of it was going to hit 1600 to 3200 in those cases. You could bring it up there. Let's see the secrets.
Yeah, so here we're at 5000 ISO
5000,
where I'm really noticing that kind of nice organic kind of noise to it. And again, we're bringing up some shadows in this.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we want to really highlight the skin and things like that.
These are minimally tweaked, but and I just want to kind of capture the light as it actually was. But I really enjoyed it.
But what I love with this too, what kind of focal lengths were you shooting at? Because looking at the perspective and everything, it looks like you're not shooting on a lot of telephotos with these.
This was compressed. I mean, this is a telephoto lens here. I think I brought an 85. It's been so long.
Right. It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, but this would be a very normal range here. So yeah, I was kind of swapping between 85. Yeah, using an 85 quite a bit. So certainly not back of the room with a huge long lens kind of stuff. Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I certainly feel like this, compared to a lot of set photography that I see, really captures the feel and the vibe of the shoot better than a lot of other stuff. And I think it really comes down to the fact that we weren't very conscious of you while we were shooting.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I can move in, talk to people, get stuff. And it's not an intimidating camera, right? It really isn't. You take a D5 or something, it's a huge camera. It wasn't an intimidating camera, nice and small.
And it's also worth mentioning that the majority of this, we did have a big plasma light where I'm not really worried about it cycling. But most of what we were actually lighting the actors with were LED lights. So, we were using a Cobb 120. The 300 wasn't available at that point. We were using a lot of the Lumahawk shadowless lights. And no issues whatsoever.
No. Now, a lot of this too, I mean, there's Levi, look, a nice sort of classic shot there. What I also liked about this camera, in shots like this, you're going to see there's a lot of stuff where there's cameras in the way, there's lighting stands in the way, and the eye autofocus just right there, Broad getting on his hands and knees, doing his job. I have some hero shots of you. Yeah, Broad does his best work on his hands and knees. And there's some hero shots of you, like single-handedly, Ronin, DJI gimbal stuff. But, like this kind of stuff here, right? We got a lot of stuff in the way. Eye autofocus, even at that distance, fantastic. And I'm not spending time trying to refocus or get to the background. It just picks up your face. I loved it.
And I really love, once you get accustomed to it, throwing that camera in AFC. And if we want to highlight, something like the camera, there's a lot of shots where that's the focal point in the shot. But then if we've got something like this, we can just quickly whip it to eye autofocus. We know we're looking for faces.
And I was doing a lot of classic back button continuous autofocus as well. I did want to mention that. I know a lot of people have found that button to be quite small and quite hard to push. I personally didn't find it a problem, but yeah, I could see how some people might not like that.
And the handling of the buttons on this, they are very responsive.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of nice. While your shutter may feel a little bit odd because you're not actually feeling any clickety-clacks,
Yeah.
the rest of the buttons really have a nice positive
And
feedback.
here's just an example. Just joystick it, put the little thumb joystick, click it right over, bam. I mean,
It's
so
really
good.
funny. I see these and I don't remember like you taking these photos. And
Yeah, creepy, super creepy.
Yeah, especially with some of the ones where I'm talking to the actors and whatnot. And I know those were like tense moments.
Yeah, and I
was
didn't
just-
want to
and I
interfere.
re-
Yeah.
yeah. If somebody was taking that camera, if it was that clicky shutter, I know it would have really thrown everything off, especially for them too, because
sure.
they had an hour to kind of go through.
And we
their
brought
thing.
Duncan on set specifically. Duncan is the gentleman in the middle here.
Yeah.
Because he is always wearing dark sunglasses. So it's a great test of, the eye autofocus isn't going to work in that. Drop it back to your back button focus.
Yeah, just back button.
And highlight that face.
Use the
very
control
quickly.
stick. Yeah.
So it's a great way for you to quickly just, depending on the changing focus situations, you can respond very, very quickly.
No, it handled beautifully. I really enjoyed using it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love when we were cycling through these pictures, and there's a lot here that we're going through.
We got a lot of photos.
But I think we brought in close to 1,000 images at the end of it, and focus is consistently bang on. every shot.
it's funny.
We're choosing moments when we were selecting the 60 photos or so. that
Obviously,
we're
folks at home aren't going to see this, but a lot of these shots, I would have, like especially where you have the actors, and you want to get that particular facial expression. A lot of these shots,
Oh, man,
I love that shot. I've got like 30 pictures, just from a quick burst, second and a half. I got 30 photos to really pick the facial expression I want. So, that has to be appreciated too. There was a lot of wading through, but I had the confidence to know, I think I got that facial expression. I know what I want out of that.
Yeah, and things like this where you've got all of that huge,
Eye autofocus.
huge autofocus coverage in that. It's great because a moment like this, you're
Nice and
getting
quick.
the composition that you want, and you're not worried about am I going to have good autofocus in that particular part of the
Yeah.
frame?
No. And again, that was fairly low light. It did a brilliant job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions coming in, Ron?
It helps when the
Yes.
lighting is so pretty as well.
Is Levi still single?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you
Super
like
duper
complicated, passionate, ultimately tumultuous relationships.
Stallion? Is that
He's a stallion. Yeah.
He's a stallion.
You just better know your
breaking
cinema.
I feel like Levi has like a really wonderful, heart-wrenching relationship drama in him somewhere. but
Yes.
he just needs to really like suffer in a relationship.
Please,
in order-
someone
No, yeah.
destroy his heart and make him into the
We'll be
filmmaker
there
we know
for
he can
him.
be.
Yeah.
Look at you, just like one-handing that gimbal, man. Bam.
You make me look good.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very
That's a
welcome.
good-
Hey,
Yeah,
man, no
we're
problem.
good.
No. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, on a set situation like this, and of course for wedding photography too, I think the same benefit would apply in having this just fly on the wall, totally discreet kind of thing. Right. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. I didn't have to mess around with autofocus. It was a very intuitive, very seamless kind of experience. So I really enjoyed it.
Well, and it's funny. I feel like the A9 is going to get a little bit of a kick now that so many people are investing in the A7R III, and it's certainly the most popular camera at the shop right now.
Yeah.
So those people are going to start having Sony lenses. They're going to have adapters for Canon lenses. We're seeing a lot of that as well. And now that they're in that system, I do think we're going to see a lot of people like, you know what? I can really differentiate myself from other photographers by being silent. Those are
Yes.
the people I think who should be looking at the A9 right now.
And I mean, even for event photography, because I did an event a couple nights ago, and I just it's a restaurant event, kind of walking around, having I have the A7S II, really low light kind of situation, but having that click would just distract from the table conversation. They like immediately would kind of look at you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And not that I would necessarily use it in that setting, but it's amazing now that I'm seeing the photos for the first time how kind of great these images come from a silent shutter.
Yeah.
And again, no, I do not remember any of these moments.
Well, that's
being
good.
disturbed,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So-
I mean, and the key thing too is, you just don't want to disturb people when you're doing this kind of stuff. Now, here's the thing though. At this time, we just had the A9. Could I do this with an A7R III in its silent shooting mode?
I mean, there's certainly some frames here where there's some movement going on that, I would be worried
Worried about rolling shutter?
Like, I'll take noise in an image. I'll take clipped highlights. If
don't want
there's
rolling
any
shutter.
evidence of rolling shutter, I can deal with it in video. We're just getting accustomed to it because there's very few global shutter cameras. In stills, though, I find it's like one of the unforgivable things in an image. Any evidence of rolling shutter, I hate.
It looks weird. I mean, to be honest, I think I could have done a fair amount of this with the A7R III. To be honest. Now, the 42 megapixels isn't going to be a really big advantage or anything like that. The low light performance can be excellent. I'm sure it would have handled the lighting situation in a very similar way. But so to be fair, the A7R III, I wouldn't get the shooting frame rate, and I did appreciate some of that for some of these shots. But a lot of this was just, there's the moment, click, take the shot.
And which drive were you using when you were on set? Did you ever push it all the way up to 20, or were you jumping between 10?
I started at 20, of course, because you want to try it out. It's a new camera, but I soon found that was unnecessary. I'm just going to have thousands of photos to wade through. And I remember when we did the EM1 Mark II video shooting hockey, I think I came out of that 2-hour event with literally 3,800 pictures. That was too much. That was just too much post. Yeah, too much.
And one other thing worth mentioning too is, with the high megapixel bodies on the Sonys, Tyler Stallman has been complaining about the fact that there's no small or medium raw. So if I was shooting a wedding, I don't want to process through 43 megapixel raw files.
Sure.
The size of the files coming out of this make more sense for that.
Just real fast, what shotgun mic are we using?
We're using the amazing Sennheiser MKH50, which is a hypercardioid microphone. I love the sound of it. This is the microphone that we used on your film. This is my favorite indoor boom microphone. Love the sound from it.
All right. Now, is it possible to find good hybrid lenses for Sony E-mount? Shoots tons of photo and video and have a ton of trouble nailing manual focus in video.
Yeah, I think this is one of the struggles because if you're going native lenses, they're all focused by wire, unfortunately, which is why I use adapted glass. And we actually have a video coming up shortly on the adapted glass State of the Union. We've been testing things like that. But yeah, I would rather have Canon mount lenses.
Right.
The Sigmas are what I'm using right now. Where you can throw it on, have autofocus for stills. When I switch back to video, I have a proper manual focus clutch.
Yeah.
I need that for shooting video. I can't do focus by wire. I won't do focus by wire. You can see we're using Fujinon in this as well, and that's a great workaround for video
For sure. I'd have, honestly, even with the adapted glass, the A9, the A7R III now having these new systems, very impressive for the autofocus and continuous focus on that. This was with native glass, and that did give a slight speed advantage. But autofocus works really well even with adapted glass now.
For sports, go native.
Native, for sure, yeah.
And one other thing we found kind of interesting is the longer the lens, it seems like that focus performance dips a little bit. Super tellies, we still haven't seen great performance when they're adapted.
For sure. Well, and it can't be underestimated. I mean, shaking hands with long lenses does give a difficulty to an autofocusing system trying to maintain tracking and pick up on something there. Yep. We're constantly adjusting the mic, but hopefully we're good here. Yep. I'll talk quieter because I know I'm so loud.
Just overpowering.
Yeah. Coming back to this and kind of going through the experience again, the A9 is still such a niche camera, but I think it's an ideal wedding photography camera.
I think it's the best.
This would be so good for shooting weddings. Yeah, so good for shooting weddings.
And I can certainly see it for wildlife. I think it would make a lot of sense to have a perfectly silent shutter, but we need Sony to get the glass for that. So
yeah, we still don't have the glass for it.
And I think that's part of the reason. I think we can say we've seen adoption of the A9 has been pretty slow. And I think a lot of that is the two areas Sony's marketing it for, sports and wildlife, they need to get the glass for that.
Yeah.
The 1-400 is a beautiful lens.
It kicks ass, but with 24 megapixels and a 400mm reach, that's just not enough, even with cropping. You can't crop that camera too far.
And again, if you adapt long lenses, that's where the adapted glass seems to be at its weakest.
A7R III with 100-400, yeah, you can crop that.
You can crop the hell out of that.
Here's a pretty decent one. Okay, I shoot weddings and I have A mount, but want to switch to E. A9 or A7R Mark III? The answer is both.
Yeah, the answer is both, but I mean, if you want a tool that's going to be able to get you the best out of what you're capable of doing possible, I think an A9 does make sense. That's where, although it's expensive and it's specialized, it is specialized for what you're doing.
And it gives you a tool to set yourself apart from other photographers in the same market. I'm the silent wedding guy. For doing the posed portraits, things like that, I mean, an R would be great because you're getting more dynamic range, more detail. But for the ceremony, for the reception, the A9 gives you such a huge advantage.
And I mean, we're still talking 24 megapixels, formal shots and stuff. You don't need 43 megapixels, right? I mean, no one's gonna. Does anybody have a picture of their wedding like over the mantelpiece, like 4 feet wide?
If I showed up at someone's house and
do.
they had a 24 by 36 of their wedding, I'd be like, these are the most self-involved people I've ever seen. These two are insufferable.
24 is perfect. I think the A9 would be like the best wedding choice possible. Now, if you said, hey, I shoot weddings on the side, but I also do landscape, I also want to do, then maybe
Some
an A7.
commercial work.
Yeah, and video, maybe an A7R III would be a better all-around choice.
Which one would you want, Brad?
I don't do weddings.
Why not?
I don't participate.
Because he's
in them.
non-committal.
I don't believe him.
He doesn't
You know
believe
that.
in love. So.
As Levi will soon find out, it's not,
a world of
not
hurt.
a good thing. Yeah.
Let's see.
A7R III.
So
yeah.
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 I do find it's nice to have, like, I do more corporate work
Right.
when I do gigs on the side. So I find that having that large megapixel range for obviously post-production too. So I do a lot of work in Photoshop after that. It's nice to have it, but my primary shooter for the longest time has been that A7S. So like I'm going from 12, 14 megapixels to that. That's
You need an
that's
A7R
beautiful.
III.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
need
I
a
was,
sort of-
I was gonna pick one up today.
And again, as a filmmaker,
Yeah.
on top of that, right? I mean, as a filmmaker, A7R III has some
Fantastic movie,
appeal.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have, of course, the heated debate of A7R Mark III and versus the A9. Someone saying A7R shoots silent, and
It does.
Why would you need 20 frames per second for weddings?
Yeah, and
How about trying to catch that kiss?
And I do think that this is something that Sony and Fuji is very guilty of this as well, is
Yeah.
they're constantly like, check out our silent shooting. And this is the thing we have to state over and over again. What's exciting about the A9, it's a silent camera with a very fast scanning sensor.
Yes.
So no rolling shutter. The A7R III can absolutely shoot silently.
Oh, yeah.
But if somebody quickly moves their hand in a shot, we mentioned weddings,
Oh, yeah.
like the bouquet. I
Bouquet
don't-
throwing, someone running across the dance floor to give someone a hug. Yeah.
I don't think you need 20 frames per second for that. I
No.
think that spec is largely irrelevant for that kind of shooting. But the people who are buying it are set photographers and event photographers. That's it. We're not seeing it really hitting the targeted sports and wildlife shooters, and it's very capable in that.
Sure.
But it needs the glass, and there's very capable bodies already out there. There's not a silent full-frame camera with no rolling shutter.
And we talk about things like fast movement in the scene, but you also have to appreciate, like on set here and shooting a wedding as well, I would easily be able to, in silent mode with the A9, I'm moving the camera a lot. If I'm moving like, oh, I want that shot, like, oh, there's the moment, and you whip the cam over, you got a fast shutter speed, you do a burst. I know with the A9, I'm not going to get weird, strange diagonals in the verticals. Whereas with the A7R III, I would have to move the camera, wait, get the shot, hopefully nothing's moving. I mean, it's not intuitive.
In our initial A7R III review, we showed it wasn't even a fast pan to follow a dancer, but the rolling shutter on that was atrocious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that can certainly ruin shots. So,
And that was even just a hand spinning in the air and stuff, dancing. Yeah.
so if you're looking at a camera and you're buying it for the silent shutter, do some research and make sure
Yeah.
that it's actually going to scan properly. I would say it's either Micro Four Thirds or the A9 are your options if you want a fast scanning electronic
And then,
shutter
20
right
frames per second. I mean, I don't know how you feel about shooting quickly, but 20 frames per second, I know people online be like, oh, you don't need that. 6 is plenty. We did photos amazing with weddings when we had 3 frame per second motor drives, yada, yada, yada. And that's true and everything, but they're tools. It gives you the capability to get that facial expression, to do a quick burst when you've got that, bouquet catch. You're only going to do that once, you know what I mean? So it is nice to have that option, and you, of course, can slow it down. You don't have to shoot at 20
Well, it sounds
Yeah.
like it's like you would go with the maybe if you have an arsenal already to do weddings.
Yes.
Right? And the A9 is a great investment to make.
It's a
kinda
tool,
tack onto that.
specialized tool.
Exactly. Yeah. Not just, but if you're going to just start out on weddings and that's what you're going to do, it's kind of, it depends which one you want to be in. Like Jordan was saying, like if you want to be that silent shooter, if that's the real special thing that you want to do, then maybe it's to go with that. But it sounds like an amazing tool within the arsenal.
Now,
Absolutely.
Just grazing over it because we have, I guess, some wedding photographers in the chat right
Perfect.
now. Have we tried this with a flash, rifling off shots at 20 frames a second?
Oh, it doesn't work.
Doesn't work. Yeah.
It has a mechanical shutter, and that will work with your flash at 5 frames per second.
Yes.
If you wanted to use it, with a Profoto B1 and machine gun it, then you're looking at a 1DX or a D5.
Okay, it wouldn't work with Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Constant light's the future, baby.
Yeah, get good.
But no, if you rely on speed lights and things like that for a lot of your work, this probably won't be the right tool for you. Or just be aware, you're back to 5 frames per second, you lose that speed advantage.
Yeah.
And you now have an audible shutter as well again. A Shaklaki shutter.
Yes, exactly.
Is the technical term.
Okay.
I mean, 5 frames per second is not bad. It's not great though, but it's not bad.
Yeah, keep going.
Who shoots flash anymore?
Huh?
No, I know a lot of people do.
People in receptions, apparently. So.
No, true. Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely
do
true.
want to say we've really focused on this in terms of the wedding photographer and the set photographer. And a lot of that too is because, in terms of video, we've done a video, you can check it out using the A9 to shoot Tony and Chelsea's video. And definitely check out Max Yuryev's and Tony and Chelsea's video in terms of it being a sports and wildlife camera. There's already a lot of information out there. So definitely take a look at that stuff.
Make no mistake, this is a niche product, and when the A7R III came out, it made that even more niche.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
I think we're getting close to the end of our time.
Thanks so much for joining us, guys. We do love doing this show. Thanks to
Barad,
Barad
thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us along.
Yeah, for letting me DP the film and putting up with Chris's shenanigans.
Which apparently wasn't that hard to do, so thank you.
It was great.
Yeah,
No,
thank
you
man.
for coming on set and being super professional, and thanks for lending me your time as well, as always.
Of course.
Can't accept.
I just want to block your face with the light. Yeah.
Sorry, there we go. It's probably driving him nuts. I'm excited to see you as Tom Cruise.
What? Yeah, exactly.
You look great. You look great in the poster.
It's funny. It's so fake in person, but on camera, work great.
Yeah.
Don't miss the premiere of our Wooden Nickels. We've got a lot of those coming up.
Yep.
Which we're excited about.
Thanks
Cool.
so much,
Anything
guys.
else you want to show, Ron? Any other?
No.
Okay.
No.
Awesome. We'll see you guys then.
Oh, hey, there's the alarm.
That's it's end of the live show
That's
alarm.
the end of the live show alarm. We actually made it through an episode without the alarm.